Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the live chat. I believe we are back. I believe we are rocking. I believe we are good to go. It is so good to see everyone again. Hello. It's been like 3 weeks. I think that's the longest gap I might have ever had from streaming on this channel. So I am so sorry about that. So sorry about that. What happened? It's a whole combination of stuff. First of all, I had like a week where I was having really bad insomnia, right? Like was barely sleeping, maybe just a couple hours a day. It was or a couple hours a night. It was really rough. So then my body got all worn down. I got sick. So then I had like a week of being sick. And then after that, I had like a crazy work schedule. So I was just like gone for 3 weeks. I am so sorry, everyone. Hopefully, we don't run into anything like that again. But it is so good to be back. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be back in the live chat. I have missed this so much. So, hello, everyone. It is so good to see you all again. Can everyone just let me know that the mic sounds good, that everything sounds good on the chat? Before we get rocking, before we get going, let me know down into chat that everything is good. It's been a hot minute, so I want to make sure my setup is still good to go. For anyone, if this is your first time as part of my live chat, if you're coming over here for the very first time, I've gotten a lot of new followers on Twitter lately, so there is a chance we're going to have some new folks here into chat today. Basically, the way this works, you drop your comments, you drop your questions down into chat, and I get to as many questions as possible, okay? It can be about anything in the video game industry or even beyond. So just drop those comments, drop those questions. Two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the free method, right? It's just typing a question, hitting enter, and then you're good to go. I get to as many of those as I possibly can during the chat. However, if you want to 100% guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be the super chat option. You just type a donation of whatever you want, hit enter, I get a notification, and I get to super chats immediately. So that's the way to guarantee it, but don't feel pressured, don't feel obligated to donate into chat. I get to free questions as well. So what can we talk about, y'all? We have 3 weeks essentially of gaming news to talk about. So I would say they weren't the craziest 3 weeks for gaming news. So if we were gonna have some time for me to be away, maybe that was the good weeks to do it. But there's still obviously quite a bit that we can talk about from those 3 weeks. But I think the main topic that a lot of people are going to want to talk about is MLB The Show 21 and Outriders coming to Game Pass and what this means for the future of Microsoft Game Pass, right? What is the main thing that's so crazy about these two announcements, right? We've had big games launch on Game Pass, right? Well, let me correct that. We have had big games come to Game Pass from third parties, right? Huge games. We could go on and on down the list. Look at all the EA Play stuff that it's come over. Look at even before Microsoft acquired Bethesda, you saw big Bethesda games come over. There's been a ton of games, right? But what's very interesting about MLB The Show 21 and Outriders is we are now seeing third-party AAA games launch day one on the service, right? And this is a change, okay? We have seen Microsoft themselves launch their AAA flagship games on the service. We've seen Gears 5, I could go down the list, but a bunch of Microsoft's first-party stuff. And that was kind of the original promise from Microsoft, right? Is that you can get our games day one. But what is interesting now, what is the new curveball, is third parties are slowly, it appears, taking up Microsoft on that offer and starting to launch some of their games day one on the service. So I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of questions around, A, what does this mean for Sony? Because this is a Sony Studios game launching. B, what other games might be coming to Game Pass in this similar method? And, what does this mean for the service in general? What can we expect? So we're going to dive into all of that. Drop your questions. Like I said, it does not have to be about that. You can literally ask me about anything in the video game industry. It can be Nintendo, PlayStation, whatever. We don't stick to just one topic, but usually there is an overarching kind of theme. All right, let's get rocking. I already see a bunch of comments dropping into chat, a bunch of questions. I'm not 100% sure how turnout's going to be today because it is a Saturday. I never stream on Saturdays, so I'm sure a lot of people are busy. So I have no idea the size of the chat today, but thank you everyone who has shown up, who's already come out. I've really missed this. I am amped. I am like seriously excited. Okay, let's get to these super chats first. We do have several super chats right off the bat. Timmer72299 with the first super chat. I should not be surprised. Timmer always in chat, always so supportive, and always rocking on Twitter. So good to see you, Timmer. Saying, hi, Benji. ZeniMax has appeared in almost 10 million search results, was exactly 2 million before the acquisition. What are your thoughts on this? Does it make it the biggest gaming news ever? Well, here's the thing. There is no doubt that Microsoft acquiring ZeniMax was one of the biggest news stories that has almost ever happened in the gaming industry, right? One of. I don't know if I could go as far as to say it's the biggest, right? Especially whenever you start to factor in things like console announcements, console reveals, right? Showing off the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 for the first time. Obviously, that's going to generate ridiculous metrics, introducing a whole new platform. But I would say for just like a regular gaming news, right? Like not something like an E3, just a standalone news story. There's no doubt it's one of the biggest. And why is it one of? Well, there's a clear reason for that. We have literally never seen a console manufacturer buy out an entire third-party publisher, right? It's not unheard of to see console manufacturers buy studios, right? Even before Microsoft went crazy on this acquisition spree, it wasn't uncommon to see that happen. Someone go out, buy a studio to bolster theirs. It's happened throughout history. But this was definitely something on a scale we've never seen before, where they actually went out and bought out an entire publisher. So that's, of course, vastly disruptive. And there was so much discussion on that, too, around exclusivity. There were so many questions with it. We're talking about some major brands they own, right? I mean, Fallout and Elder Scrolls are enormous brands. I mean, Elder Scrolls, we've talked about on the chat before. Elder Scrolls Skyrim is the best-selling single-player RPG of all time, and Fallout actually is not far behind it. The Fallout games are also huge. So, yeah, Timmer, without a doubt, it ranks as one of. It ranks as one of the biggest just standalone news stories for sure. I mean, it's crazy, right? This is going to be one of those things that's going to have long-term repercussions, right? It's not just a news story that's a big deal for like a week. This is something, I mean, it's going to forever change Xbox, right? They added all these studios. They've added all these brands. It's like a permanent change for Xbox. So, yeah, it's crazy, Timmer. I'm not surprised it had giant search results. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Crazy, crazy. Thank you for the super chat. Plastic Hearts Podcast with a 10 super chat. So good to see you, Plastic Hearts Podcast. Always in chat. Saying, Benji boy, nice to see you back. It's so good to be back. I miss chat so much. I am amped. I am so excited, y'all. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts. And then we've got two more super chats, and we'll start diving into free questions, it looks like. Split End 89 with a 2 super chat. Best mod in the entire business. Saying, here's a kiss for you with the smoochy emoji. Thank you, Split End. Thank you so much. Thank you for modding, and thank you for always being so awesome. And then we've got one down here on the bottom. Kasim Ketfi, hope I'm saying that correct, with a 5. Saying, do you think Microsoft need to evolve Xbox Live Gold to be more relevant than it is now, especially when you compare free Xbox Live Gold games versus PlayStation Plus games? This is actually a fantastic question, Kasim. Like a great question. I've actually been kind of thinking about tweeting about this, but it's been a bit of an interesting topic and one that's I've had to put a lot of thought into, right? And I'm really glad you asked this, Kasim, because here on YouTube, I can go a lot longer with my thoughts than I can on a Twitter thread, right? You only have so many characters on Twitter. So let's look at Xbox Live Gold, okay? This is becoming, as Game Pass becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and more important for Microsoft, the split between Gold and Game Pass is feeling weirder and weirder as time goes on. And what do I mean by that? It is very clear that Xbox Live Gold, like Gold itself, whenever I say Gold, I'm not necessarily referencing things like the server infrastructures and all these sorts of things, but like the free games and things like this, it is ultra clear. I mean, ultra clear that the investment on Microsoft's side is fully being funneled into Game Pass, right? I mean, the games with Gold games have gone so far downhill, it's unbelievable. And I'm not trying to like trash those games because there are still some interesting titles that go on games with Gold, but what we're seeing is very, very old games and also like very small indie games. And don't get me wrong, I love indies. There are all kinds of amazing indie games out there. You see me tweet about indies. I talk about playing indie games. It's not a bash on indies, but when you look at what PlayStation Plus is doing, right? They're like, it's literally opposites. Games with Gold is going down in quality, seemingly monthly, and PlayStation Plus is going up every month. And the main reason for that is that Sony is really investing into Plus. It's very clear. And Microsoft is pulling back investment from Gold and using that money instead to get big games into Game Pass. So it's feeling weirder and weirder as time goes on. Like, why is Gold and Game Pass a separate thing? Now, obviously they're not whenever you factor in Ultimate, which will, kind of bring them together. But I think Microsoft internally is going to have to do some soul searching around what exactly are we doing with Gold? Like, what is the future of Gold? Here's the thing. I think eventually Game Pass and Gold need to just be one thing. Like, yes, right now you are getting some where it's like, well, these people subscribe to Gold and these people subscribe to Game Pass. Maybe people don't want both. Maybe people just want one or the other. Listen, I know it's complicated, but something needs to get fixed there and figured out. I don't think they can forever keep these as separate programs. I think it's just bad PR, the games with Gold stuff. Like, it just looks bad every month when they come out because they only announce like a day apart, right? You'll see Gold come out with their free games and they're not impressive offerings at all. And then you see PlayStation Plus, like the next day come out with theirs and they typically look far better. So yeah, I do agree, Kasim. They need to do something. I'm not exactly 100% sure what the answer is there, right? Microsoft's going to have to run a whole bunch of numbers, find out what makes sense financially, find out what they need to do to improve one service or the other. But I think keeping them completely separate and not making Gold more impressive or better than it is, I think it is an issue. Yeah, I do think they need evolution there. Thank you for the super chat. And we just had another super chat drop here from Aaron Ho. Thank you so much, Aaron, with a 25 here saying, do you see a chance NBA, FIFA, etc. own a game studio instead of give licenses to other publishers? Thanks. Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? So as of now, NBA's license, FIFA's license, right? Those are all going to other places, right? For example, NBA has a license with EA for NBA Live. They have a more important license, I would say, with Take-Two for the 2K series. FIFA, for examples with EA, etc. And basically, Aaron's just wondering, could they just do this internally, right? Build up their own studio completely dedicated to that. Here's my thing, Aaron. I would say nowadays, probably not, only strictly because those brands have become so synonymous, right, with the development teams that make those. So the internal teams at EA, the internal teams at Take-Two, they have so many years of experience with it. And NBA has become like 2K has become the brand, right? When you think an NBA game, you think NBA 2K. When you think soccer or football, you think FIFA, right? EA's FIFA game. I think you would just lose a lot of sales, right? Maybe, in some ways you might be able to think you can make a better game or something even internally, but I think it will just continue to be licensed because I just think it makes more sense, right? Than having to build up your own team and do this all kinds of stuff, especially as the brands have become super established. So I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if you see any of them go internal. Keep in mind, MLB themselves actually tried to do that. We can actually spin this off really quick, and then I'll move on to the next question. But MLB tried to kind of make their own baseball game, RBI Baseball, which is an MLB game, and it just never competed with the show, right? Which is Sony's game, which we're now seeing come to Xbox. Like MLB basically kind of tried to pull it off. They tried to have their own baseball game. I don't know if it was 100% internally developed. I'd have to look into that, or if it was still licensed, but basically all the backing was from MLB themselves on that. And it just didn't work out, right? The show was still the premier baseball game, and that's a licensed game to Sony. So yeah, I don't think so. I don't think you'll see them go internal. I think it'll just continue to be a license. Two more super chats. Thank you so much, everyone, for all these super chats dropping. It's so good to see everyone in chat. Megalox here with a 50 DKK super chat. Thank you so much, Megalox. Thank you so much. Hi, Benji. What do you think about Outriders' long-term sales? How problematic do you think these connectivity issues are in relation to long-term sales? It's a great question, and I actually just asked this on my own Twitter account this morning. So for anyone that missed this, Outriders launch, okay, so its launch, we can just look at its launch, is huge, okay? Whenever I say huge, I mean enormous. It has completely blown away, I think, anyone's expectations in terms of numbers, including my own. And I'll be honest with y'all, I've been a little bullish on Outriders ever since the demo, and that was because I was seeing some very impressive metrics. Anyone that follows my Twitter account, if you've done it for a while, I've been tweeting about how much engagement has gone up with that game for the last few weeks on Google searches. If you notice, the demo had over 2 million players within a week. Feedback to the demo felt overall positive. So I'll be honest with you, Megalox, I was expecting a good launch, but this is a far bigger than good. And let's give you some numbers and some context around how impressive the only hardcore numbers we have are on PC, but let's look at how impressive this is. That game did 111,000 concurrent players on Steam day one, and that is with extreme server issues. Let's compare that to some stuff. That is the biggest launch ever in history for Square Enix as a publisher on Steam. That's bigger than any Final Fantasy game, bigger than any Tomb Raider game, bigger than any Deus Ex game. I could go down the list, right? Established big brands. This is a new IP, and it's their biggest launch ever on Steam. Now let's compare that to some other, comparable games in the genre. That's a higher concurrent peak players on day one than the all-time peak for Borderlands 3. Borderlands is an established, huge loot shooter franchise, and Outriders had a bigger day one on PC than Borderlands 3. You get what I'm getting at? That is insane, right? It had a ginormous launch day. But the problem we're seeing, okay, the problem is that these servers, are just melting down, right? Because of so much interest. Way bigger, I think, than Square Enix expected, way bigger than anything People Can Fly expected. And even, like I said, someone bullish like me, it's more than I expected, right? You have Game Pass and you have 18 million people that have instant access to your game, plus the huge success on Steam. I think they just can't keep up. So that is the question. How does this affect long-term sales? Megalox, I'm going to be honest with you. They are so bad, I think it will impact the short term. Now, I'm actually more confident because the game is better than expected that long-term legs might recover, especially if People Can Fly do a really good job of supporting this game with like high-quality expansions and DLC. I think the game's good enough that it is going to do just fine in the long run. But the short term, right? Let's say the next like 1 week to 2 weeks, I think short-term sales will be impacted because if you're someone that hasn't bought this game yet, right, and you're seeing all this positive feedback, hey, the game's fun to play, but you're also seeing people say, but I literally can't connect to the game, you're going to wait, right? You're going to be like, okay, I am interested in this game, but there's no way I'm going to go out and spend $60 right now on a game that I literally can't play for at least half the day, right? Servers have been going down for hours at a time. So I think long term, we're going to be pretty good. Okay. Long term, I think we're going to be pretty good on it. But short term, you could see some issues. I'm seeing Hammersley Ford on the bottom saying it was Epic's exclusive for a year for Borderlands 3, and that killed it. I totally get it. I totally get it, Hammersley Ford. But let me give you another comparison point. Okay, Borderlands 2, which was not Epic exclusive and which was also huge, Outriders almost hit the peak concurrent ever for Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 was, I think, 124,000 concurrent, if I'm remembering right, and it was 111,000 for Outriders. So even if you take Borderlands 3 and you take the Epic exclusivity thing and you look at Borderlands 2, which was not, you're still talking Outriders was almost as big as Borderlands 2. You get what I'm getting at. Outriders huge day is crazy. It's a crazy huge launch. Crazy huge. All right. Hope that answers your question, and thanks. Thanks so much. And then we have RRD with a $2 CA super chat here saying, no big exclusives yet. Still dominating the news. Fire emoji. I'm guessing you're talking about Xbox. And here's what I'll say. Xbox is on a hell of a run of good PR. Like, they are on a hell of a run. Whether you like Xbox, whether you like Microsoft or not, even if you're like a hardcore PlayStation fan or a hardcore Nintendo fan and you don't like Xbox, at least from a PR perspective, they are on a great run, right? They really, really are. Are there still things Xbox needs to improve on? Absolutely, right? We need to start seeing all these first-party studios that they've acquired start releasing consistent, high-quality, big games on a regular basis, right? We're still in a bit of a drought in terms of their first-party output. But yes, specifically in terms of news and PR, Microsoft and Xbox are in a very good place. They are in a very good place. If everything else can catch up to what they're doing in terms of services and things like this, they're going to be great. They're going to be great. All right. Thank you so much for the super chats. Super chats are cleared for now. I'm going to start hitting on some free questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Hammersley Ford. Hey, Benji, hope you're doing good. I missed the live chats. Me too. I promise I'll try to never go that long again without a live chat. I love doing one every week. Like I said off the top, there was a whole bunch of issues that led to those 3 weeks off. I'm going to try to never do that again. Anyways, can Halo Infinite PC be bigger than Xbox with day one Steam release and multiplayer being free? Hammersley Ford, my expectation is that Halo Infinite will be the biggest launch in the entire history of the Xbox brand in terms of player counts, okay? Now, sales is going to be a big, big question. We have seen that Game Pass in some cases boosts sales. And in fact, I would say in many cases, Game Pass boosts sales. Why? Because it's essentially free marketing, right? You're essentially getting millions of people that are going to get hands-on with your game. Some of those people were going to buy the game, but also some of those people weren't. And you're getting, obviously not all 18 million are going to play every game, but you're going to get millions from Game Pass of people that are going to be basically just free tweeting and free talking to their friends about the game. So that a lot of times you have seen many developers outright say that Game Pass has actually lifted their sales. There is, though, also, I believe, some limited evidence that in certain cases, it can hinder sales somewhat. And for me, the biggest example of that is Gears 5. I truly believe that Gears 5 sales have been cannibalized by Game Pass. There's a whole bunch of interesting questions about why, right? Like, why would that be the case for that game, but not certain other ones? And that has been a bit of a question, but I believe that game was cannibalized by Game Pass, but not all of them. The other component with Halo Infinite sales is going to be, yes, that multiplayer is free to play. So for people that only want to play that strictly competitive Halo experience, they don't want to play single player, they don't want to play necessarily, who knows what kind of co-op options are going to be in the boxed product, you know, that is a big question. But at the very least, if we're just talking about players, right, the amount of people engaging and playing in your game, I am very confident. In fact, people can clip this out if they want to if I'm wrong, and who knows, maybe I will be, and if so, I will eat my own crow. But I believe it's very likely that Halo Infinite will have the #1 biggest launch ever for any Xbox game of all time in player counts, because you're going to have all those Xbox Series X and S owners that are thirsty for a big Xbox game. You're going to have the Xbox One people that haven't converted over yet. And yes, it is going to be day one on PC. We have not seen a Halo game day one on PC. I don't think ever. And if there was one, it was quite a while ago. And things like Master Chief Collection that have come way later have done huge business on PC. So plus free to play, yeah, it's going to be giant, Hammersley Ford. It's going to be giant. The question sales, though. Sales I'm not 100% sure on. I'm not necessarily bullish that it's going to be the biggest Halo launch ever in sales, but player count, I'm almost positive. I'll be shocked if it's not. I think we just had a super chat drop. We do. Big Fresh 37 with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Big Fresh. How hard do you think it'll be to unlock the hidden character of Master Chief in MLB The Show? Oh my goodness, that is a hilarious super chat. Thank you so much, Big Fresh 37. Yeah, I don't think that Sony's that comfortable yet that they're gonna put Master Chief in the show. But that is hilarious. That got a good laugh out of me. Yeah, that is funny. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going to make a bold prediction that you're not going to see Chief in the show. Okay? I know it's bold. I know it's out there, but I don't think it's going to happen. But it will be interesting, right? I'm sure there's going to be some more detailed questions on this, but it is going to be interesting to see how MLB does on Game Pass, especially now that it's on Game Pass. Let me give you some other context really quick on this, y'all, before I go to the next question. I know if you're in Europe or if you're in Asia or if you're in South America, you know, it might not seem like a big deal that MLB The Show is going on Game Pass, right? Because yes, there's the whole PlayStation element of this, which is pretty crazy. But if you're in, you know, those markets, MLB is not necessarily like the biggest thing, right? In fact, a lot of you might not even really know anything about the sport or how it's played, right? Like I'll tell you, I'm in North America. I don't know anything about cricket. I mean, I literally could tell you nothing about it. I don't know how points are scored. I don't know how it's played. And that might sound like blasphemy to some of you, but I'm sure the same goes with baseball, right? Some of you probably, there's just no baseball presence where you're from. But in the US, MLB The Show going to Xbox and going to Game Pass is definitely a big deal. Here's some context and some numbers around that. So in 2020, right, last year, MLB The Show 2020 was the number 18 best-selling game of the entire year in the US, and that was being exclusive to one platform, y'all. So locked into just PlayStation, it made top 20 best-selling games of the year. So for the US market, it's a big deal. Okay, it's definitely a very big deal that MLB is going to be on Xbox, and even more importantly, that's going to be on Game Pass. So I know it's not near as big of a deal globally, but this is a big, very good get for Microsoft and Xbox in the US market, right? It's a big get for sure. Benji with a 10 super chat. So good to see you, Benji. Hello, hello. Saying, hi, Benji. Different reports seem to suggest 4 Resident Evil games are being produced at the same time. Village, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Revelations 3 Switch, and Resident Evil 9. Legit? Yes, Benji, I believe this is 100% legit. I don't have like super insider info on this. There's a couple things though. Like the Resident Evil 4 Remake, I can tell you it's 100% real. That's not shocking in any way, shape, or form. You've seen reliable places like VGC report on it. But yes, Resident Evil 4, it's literally being made. Okay? Resident Evil Village, obviously, game's about to come out. I can also tell you that, yes, the Resident Evil Revelations, whatever that is, I don't know that it's going to be called Revelations 3, but that Switch Resident Evil game, yes, that's also real. And then Resident Evil 9, it does sound like is in early pre-production. Yeah, some of this stuff actually leaked out of Capcom's own internal leaks, right? Whenever they got that ransom on them. So yeah, Benji, there are, it looks like 4 Resident Evil games indeed in development. Here's the one comment I'll have on it. Actually, I'll just give you a couple. Village, I am expecting to be probably at the very least the second largest launch ever for the Resident Evil franchise. Here's the interesting thing. It's going to be hard to actually match Resident Evil 6's launch. I did not realize, like I forgot how big Resident Evil 6's launch was. I just went back and was talking to some other people and privately, and we were talking about Village and its sales potential. And I was talking about, you know what, I think it's going to be the number one. And then we started diving into it. You know, we were like, well, what is actually the biggest Resident Evil launch? Let's go back and look. Y'all, 6's launch was insane. And it was insane because Capcom grossly overshipped it. I mean, bad, okay? It launched, I believe, if my memory is correct, launch shipments for that game were 4 million copies. To put that in perspective, over the next quarter, it only shipped 500,000 more, y'all. That's terrible, okay? It was that grossly overshipped that they barely shipped anything the next quarter. You went from 4 million shipped to 500K in the next quarter. I mean, it was terrible. And my numbers could be slightly off there, but it's right around there, okay? And then that game's legs completely fell off a cliff. Long term, it ended up recovering because of like things like re-releases, but that's going to be freaking hard to match only because of overshipments. Village, I think, sell-through will be higher than 6's even. But I'll be surprised if they beat that. I mean, that'll be really impressive. But at the very least, my minimum expectation for Village is 3.5 million shipped within that first week. We saw Resident Evil 2 Remake hit 3 million, and we saw Resident Evil 2 Remake, I want to make sure I said that right. I might have said 3, but that hit 3 million in its first week. And then we saw Resident Evil 7 ship 2.5 million in its first week. And Resident Evil 7, keep in mind, that game was received very well, but it was coming off when the franchise was in a bad place, right? It was coming off Resident Evil 6, which was widely hated by many people. So 1 million higher than Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 7 and 500K higher than Resident Evil 2 Remake, especially in the good place the franchise is now, makes sense to me. So yeah, I think Village 3.5 million plus in its first week would be my guess there. And thank you for that super chat, Benji. All right, back to some free questions. Silence PP7. Good to see you again, Benji. Thoughts and expectations for Forspoken, and how significant do you think it is for a AAA Japanese studio to have a black woman as their lead character? So first of all, I think it is very cool, Silence PP7, that Square Enix went this route. Very cool. Very, very cool. Here's the thing. We don't see many black female protagonists in games in general, right? Black women. We don't see many black women just leading games from anywhere, right? Whether you want to talk about a Japanese publisher and developer or whether you want to talk about North America, right? It's just not a demographic that you see widely represented. So, period. Whoever is putting it out, props to them, because that is very, very cool that they did that. And I would say also, yes, especially so coming from Japan. And in terms of how do I expect Forspoken to do, you know, it's coming out in 2022. It's early enough in the cycle. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement around it. It's a new IP from Square Enix. It looks like it's going to be very action heavy. I think it's going to do very well. Now, is it going to sell on the same level as Final Fantasy 16? As of now, I'm going to say no. Between 16 and Forspoken, I expect Final Fantasy 16 to be the bigger of the two. Could be completely wrong on that, right? I mean, it's hard to say before these games come out, but Final Fantasy is such an established brand. I'm sure the marketing around that's going to be insane. So if I had to rank them right now, just gut instinct, I think Final Fantasy 16 is going to be bigger than Forspoken, but I would expect Forspoken to do very well. Yeah, it's going to be one of those games that's going to sell, I would say 3 to 5 million, I could see, right? In that 3 to 5 million range. Who knows? Maybe it ends up even bigger than that, but that's kind of off the top of my head-ish range. I'd be surprised if it's a 10 million seller, okay? That would surprise me because you don't see many of those types of games break into that 10 million range, okay? These Japanese type focus. But here's the thing. They are making it look different than a normal Japanese RPG type game. So maybe that will get a bigger audience than typical. Right now, though, just as a super early prediction, I'd say 3 to 5 million sounds PP7, but that could be radically off. 5 super chat coming in down here. Let me see. From Timmer. Timmer with the second super chat. Thank you so much, Timmer. ZeniMax sometimes never even told studio heads how well their game sold, I've been told. What are your thoughts on this? Timmer, it is not uncommon. It is not uncommon. You know what's funny? So maybe people that follow me only here on YouTube don't know this, but I mean a ton of the people that follow me on Twitter are developers, are people that work at publishers, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of them don't know how well their games sell. I mean, a lot. It's not uncommon at all, Timmer. I would say oftentimes the highest up people at a studio have a decent idea, especially with things like player counts, right? Because here's the thing, if your game has any sort of online component or achievement, you know how many people are playing your game. Now, players does not equal sales, right? As we all know. You have things like people lending games to people renting games. So that is less of a thing now. I would say as time goes by, players and buyers are getting closer together, except for games that are used on like PS Plus or Game Pass, right? If you're not on any sort of subscription service, players and buyers are getting closer together than they used to be because of things like digital sales, which is not somebody lending a game, right? If it's digitally, you have less people renting games as physical goes further and further away. So that is getting closer. But yes, Timmer, it is not uncommon for people that work at a dev, work at a studio, not know actually how many units they've sold, especially whenever you're factoring in shipped, right? You have an idea of how many players you have, but you don't always have an idea of how many units you've actually shipped. So there are some, it's going to vary every single time by publisher and developer, how much information you get. But I would say I'm not shocked by that, Timmer. I'm not shocked by it at all. I mean, I've had literally developers tell me when I've tweeted out something about like a new milestone for sales or shipments, I've literally had a dev on the team be like, holy cow, that's amazing. We did not know that. So, you know. But then there's going to be other cases where they know exactly how many. It's just going to vary. All right. Especially if you're self-published. Obviously, if you're self-published, you know exactly what you're shipping and selling. Like, you know, 1,000%. Really, it's whenever you have a different publisher. That's where things can get a little weird in terms of knowing all the intricate details. Hamish Lee Ford. Xbox is crazy with Game Pass this month. They are. It is true. Do you think the next months will be like this, or are they going to rest a bit? Oh, this is a great question, Hamish. They spent lots of money. This is a fantastic question. Let me get a drink really quick. So here's the crazy thing. Hamish Lee Ford, I don't know that you're going to see every month whatever the big new AAA game of the week is or the month launch day one on Game Pass. The thing that's making April so crazy is 2 of the biggest releases of the month, right, for Xbox and PlayStation. 2 of them, right? 2 of the biggest releases. When you look at the calendar and you look at the games coming out this month, MLB The Show 21 and Outriders, there's no doubt they're 2 of the biggest games of the month. They're launching day 1 on the service. I don't think people need to expect every month Microsoft's going to go out and be like, hey, whatever the big May game is, right? Let's say the Resident Evil 8 Village. Guess what? That's coming out in May. Boom, that's on Game Pass. I don't know that you can expect anything like that, right? It's going to cost a fortune to keep putting all of these games day 1. And if you're a publisher, you're not always going to want to do it, right? It's going to be a case-by-case basis. Microsoft can come at you with a bag of cash, but if you think that bag of cash ain't going to equal what your sales are going to be, like if you don't do the service, you're still not going to accept the bag of cash, right? If you think you're going to sell a freaking ton of units day 1, then you're not going to take the money. So it's going to depend on the game. It's going to depend. But here's what I will say. I think it's not going to be an exception that we see this month, right? Why would Microsoft randomly have 2 of the biggest games in 1 month hit the service and then just never do this again? clearly we are moving in a direction. Microsoft's going to put some big third-party AAA games day one on the service. But Hamish, don't expect every month to look like this, okay? I think you're going to see some months where the big release is, but not always. Not always. I mean, unless Microsoft's going to go unbelievably insane on spending money. Like, if they're just like, money is no option, just burn it all, then I guess. But they're going to have to spend a lot to do this consistently. I think we just had a super chat drop. Yes, Big Fresh 37 with a 5 cent. And I think that's your second super chat. Thank you so much, Big Fresh. Do future co-op games like Dark Alliance and Endless Dungeon, etc. need to be calling Xbox to try to get the Game Pass deal? Can they be okay without it now? Okay, here's the thing. This is a great question, and I'm also going to piggyback off this on something else, Big Fresh, that has to do with Outriders and the server outages. So first of all, if you are a co-op online game in particular, I think Game Pass is hugely attractive, okay? Very attractive. I would say less so if you're a third-party single-player game, because if I was to guess, right, if I was just to take a huge guess here, and I don't have all the internal figures that Microsoft does, but I'm going to guess that single-player games would probably have the most danger of being cannibalized by Game Pass over an online game. Because I think an online co-op game, you'll get a lot of people that will try it that were just flat out not going to buy the game. And single player, you know, a lot of those games people play once and they're done forever. And I think you will see more cannibalization about that because you're like, hey, I'm literally planning on playing this game once. Why am I going to spend $60 on it? Whereas like an online co-op game, if you think you're going to be playing it for the next like 2 years, there's no guarantee that that's going to be on Game Pass in 2 years, right? So you're probably still going to have a lot of people that just outright buy the game. And a lot of the people that play it on Game Pass will be people that maybe had little or no interest in it. So I think it's a really, really attractive offer if you're going to go for an online type thing. Yeah. Can they survive without it now? Yes, yes, yes. We've seen co-op games and online games survive for years and years and years and years without anything to do with subscription. So I don't think it's one of those things like you have to do it, but I think it's attractive, right? I do think that Game Pass helped elevate the overall visibility to Outriders. I think there's zero question on that. But the way I wanted to spin this off as well, here's my thing. And I know the devs are working their freaking butts off for the Outrider servers, right? Don't worry, I ain't going down no lazy devs type thing because I hate that kind of talk. I hate it. Let me tell you, developers are not lazy. They are working hard, whether they're at a small indie team or a big AAA studio. It's a lot of hard work. But I think Outriders is a big warning sign now. If you are an online game and you are gonna launch day one on Game Pass before launch, because once you launch, it's way harder to scale everything up. Before your game ever comes out, you need to be prepared not for hundreds of thousands of people logging in at once. You need to be prepared for millions of people logging in day one. Millions. So whatever backend servers you're using, whatever authentication services you're doing, if you're going the Game Pass route, you have at minimum 18 million people with instant access. I mean, instant. It's not one of those things where you're just looking at install base of a console, right? Because let's say a console has 100 million install base. People still need to go out and buy the game. With Game Pass, I don't need to go out and buy it. I can literally, the second that hits the store at no extra cost but my subscription, just hit the button and play. You're going to have millions of people doing that, okay? So I think this is a big warning sign for anyone in the future that's thinking about it. Hey, I'm going to launch my online game on Game Pass. Just be prepared because you are going to get hammered early on, okay? And if your game's not necessarily beloved, that might fall off quick, but at least early, right? That first week to 2 weeks, you need to be prepared for insane engagement because it's coming. So I think that's one good thing about the Outriders scenario that's happening right now, I think if you're Halo Infinite or if you're anyone like that, you're like, holy crap, we need to be ready. All right, Benji here with a 5 super chat, and I think that's your second as well, Benji. Thank you so much. Hey, Benji, thoughts on EA's Battlefield plans? 2021, next gen only, Battle Royale. Is next gen only possible? Can they challenge Call of Duty this time? So yeah, a bunch of stuff leaked about the next Battlefield, which seems to be very real because even the official Battlefield Twitter account, I think it was a Battlefield Twitter account, is Battlefield or EA, one of them, responded to it, which surprised me because it just highlighted it even more. But yes, it sounds like the next Battlefield is only on next gen, still coming this holiday. It sounds like it's going to be revealed very soon. I think it's going to be as soon as this or next month. And yeah, some sort of Battle Royale component. Here's the thing. I'm actually not super shocked that this is next gen only. I wouldn't have been surprised the other way either. But anytime, and I mean literally anytime, EA has had an opportunity to mention this game, all they've talked about is how it's pushing next gen consoles to the limits. Like literally that is all they've said. So clearly the emphasis has been on the next gen focus, and finding out that it is next gen only, not shocked. I'm not shocked. And it's actually doable by holiday 2021, but you know, it is risky. If I was a betting man, I would have bet it'd be cross gen. I think once we hit 2022, you're going to see very few cross gen games, right? 2022 is going to be really where a lot of publishers and developers leave last gen behind. But throughout 2021, I thought you would still see 99% of games be cross-gen. And they still mostly are. Battlefield's going to be one of the first big AAA multi-platform games, if this leak is true, that is next-gen only. But shout out to them, honestly. Like, I think it's kind of cool because they're going to be able to push it to the limits. Battle Royale is a smart idea. It's a huge, genre. I actually don't like Battle Royale games at all, really. But the only one I actually had fun with is Apex Legends. That's the only one I've found fun. But other than that, I'm actually not into Battle Royale. But it's huge, so it'd be crazy to ignore it, especially with how big Warzone's been, right? So, yeah. Those are some of my thoughts on it. I think it'll be big. Can it challenge Call of Duty? No. I hate to say it, no. Nothing's going to challenge Call of Duty. Listen, I will predict every year that no shooter will be bigger than Call of Duty until a shooter comes out that's bigger than Call of Duty. And you know what I'm talking about in terms of like boxed regular sales. Obviously something like Fortnite, right, is enormous. I'm talking about like a new boxed shooter game. You know, your Halos, your Call of Duties, your Battlefields. I will never predict one of them beating Call of Duty until it happens, because Call of Duty literally every single year is the biggest shooter. So it would break the cycle for something to be bigger than it. All right. Forzathon is back with a free question. Hey Benji, Microsoft has clearly started targeting AAA games for day one Game Pass releases. Which other AAA games releasing in 2021 do you think will also release on Game Pass day one? Well, Forzathon, here's the funny thing, right? If you would have asked me this question a month ago, literally only a month ago, I would have said, and I would have felt at the time I was being really smart. Hopefully I didn't lose my internet connection. I'm getting some notifications. I'm getting streaming issues. I hope everything's still holding up. If not, I am sorry. But anyways, if you would have asked me this a month ago, I would have been like, here's the thing. You're going to want to look at, publishers and developers that Microsoft has a history of relationships with, a history of marketing with. And I would have felt very smart telling you that, right? I would have been like, that's what makes the most sense. Of course, that's the direction to look. You had Square Enix, which, yes, there's some history there. Tomb Raider. But it's still a little bit of an oddball. And Sony, who has literally never released a game on Xbox, being the two games this month. So what this tells me, all bets are off. Literally anything. Right now, I'm telling you right now, Forzathon, it could be any game you can think of. Now, does that mean every game? No. What this says to me, though, is Microsoft has no limits on what they are willing to pursue. So you pick a game that's a AAA game that's coming out this year. Yep, it might happen. It could literally be any of them. It could be any. If I was to predict, though, man, what all is coming out this year? I don't think Resident Evil. I think Resident Evil is set to be too big. I think Capcom knows how big Village is going to be, so I don't think they're going to accept any kind of subscription deal. I don't think so. I think Village is going to be huge, and Capcom is well aware of it. So I would say Resident Evil Village, no. If so, it will floor me. I would not expect that. I could have seen one of the WB games if they were still coming out this year, but they're not, right? The Batman game as well as Hogwarts got delayed. Neither one of those would have actually shocked me because Microsoft at one point was pursuing acquiring WB supposedly. So there's some sort of relationship there. I wouldn't have been shocked. Honestly, Forzathon, I have no idea. I have no idea what it could be. No idea. Harmoniously Ford is saying Dying Light 2 would be crazy. That's not out there. That I could see something like that, but it's hard for me to predict because, dude, I would have never in 10 million years have predicted MLB The Show 21 the very first year it's on Xbox being on Game Pass. I mean, that just threw everything out the window. It could be anything. You pick a game and that could be it. Batwing. Hello there, Benji. Why do you think sequels for games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Spider-Man 2 take 4+ years to make? Meanwhile, games like God of War Ragnarok and others take less than that. Well, Batwing, first of all, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but God of War is going to end up taking probably 4 years because God of War is not coming out this year. Okay? It's not going to happen. It's announced for this year, but it's not coming out this year. So, bad news. It ain't happening. I don't know when next year it's going to come out, but it's not going to be this year. So that's going to take longer than initially projected, but that's mostly due to COVID. So I get your point. The original goal was for that game to be quicker than what it's going to end up being. The main issue you run into for something like Horizon or Spider-Man compared to a lot of games is open world, right? Open world is always going to be a bigger undertaking than a linear game. Now, can a linear game be a huge challenge still? Of course, right? Especially depending on how hard you're going to push the visuals and things like this. But anytime you're dealing with an open world, you're going to have way more things interacting, way larger environments, usually way more systems underneath the hood that are running everything, which also opens up a million more cases of glitches, right? Look at how many open world games at launch have a lot of glitches and a lot of bugs. It's very common. And it's not because, oh, the devs are bad. It's because anytime you're tackling a giant open environment, there are just so many areas things can go wrong. So that's always going to be a bigger undertaking. Anytime you go open world, you're asking for a bigger challenge. That's also why a lot of times when you see a team go from being a linear-based developer to being an open world developer, that transition usually does take quite some time because you have a lot to learn, right? It's a totally different setup than a linear game. But yeah, bad news. God of War is not going to be this year. At least not from what it sounds like. It does not sound like that is a 2021 game anymore. Ooh, Fuzzy Belvedere says, I'm thinking Far Cry 6 or Battlefield 6 is the next AAA game to Game Pass. Fuzzy, I could see Far Cry. No way on Battlefield unless Microsoft is going to give them, like $1 billion. Dude, it's going to have to be a lot. It's going to have to be a lot. Obviously not $1 billion. I might be exaggerating there a little. It's hundreds with an S, plural. Hundreds of millions of dollars to put Battlefield on Game Pass day one. Hundreds of millions. So, woo! If they do that, Microsoft dropped the biggest. Put it this way, Battlefield 6 would be the most expensive game they've ever put on the service if they do. Zero question. The most expensive game Microsoft has ever spent to put on the service if that game drops. So I don't see that. But Far Cry could, actually. Far Cry is not crazy. That's not crazy to think about. Let me make sure I haven't missed any super chats. We're going to still keep rocking through freebies. Yeah, nope. All right, Kieran Buckley here saying, hi, Benji. What are your sales predictions for Kena? I actually think they said it's Kena. I think they came out and said Kena or Kena. I don't remember. I'm so stoked for that game, though. Bridge of Spirits for an indie game. It has a lot of excitement around it and graphically looks amazing. Kieran, I think Kena is going to do incredible, especially if it's as good as it looks, because that game looks phenomenal. You know, I talked about this on a chat previously, so I won't go super crazy on this, but if in case someone's new here and they didn't see that chat, what Kena reminds me of, and this might sound crazy at first, like in a bad way, but I mean it in a good way. It's one of the rare indie games that before launch, right, before it has come out, has crazy hype. You see a ton of indie games that come out pretty small, and then once it's out in people's hands, blows up. A prime example of that's Valheim that just came out, right? On Steam, if you look at its first like day or two, big for an indie game, right? It was getting a lot of interest, but then it went nuclear once people got their hands on it. This is not super uncommon. You do see this in the indie space, but it's pretty rare for an indie game before it's even out to have massive hype. What this reminds me of in a lot of ways is No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is also an indie game that prior to launch had ridiculous hype. And yeah, Kena is like the first one I can remember since then with that kind of momentum. So I'm expecting, I mean, as long as this is good, y'all, I think Kena is going to sell like a flagship first party Sony game. Now, not on the scale of like a Horizon, right? Not on the scale of like a God of War. But I think if you look back at, you know, maybe some of those other smaller first party studios games that there's been in the past, I mean, I'm expecting millions, plural, millions for Kena. Yeah, I don't know about launch day millions, but huge. Yeah, it's going to do really well as long as it's good. It has huge hype. Split End piggybacking off what I said earlier. Split End saying, so with all that's been going on at this point, I think it's safe to assume literally anything can happen in the industry right now. Yeah, Split End. We are entering uncharted territory for what can happen. I mean, it's getting crazy. The video game industry is so exciting because anything can happen. How long have we been going? An hour? I'm going to go for like 15 or 20 more minutes. So I'm going to pick out some good questions here. Thank you everyone who showed up to chat today. It's so good to be back. I got about 15 to 20 minutes left. JCat, hello JCat. And JCat has a question here. And thank you, JCat, for also helping moderate the channel, saying MLB The Show is day one in Game Pass, but not PlayStation Now. Yeah, I think this is the biggest problem. Do you think it makes Sony look bad? Some say the Game Pass deal was made without Sony's involvement or consent. What do you think? So here's the thing, JCat. It is really hard to know what exactly happened behind the scenes here in terms of who got this on Game Pass. I've seen all sorts of debate. Was this a Sony decision? Was this an MLB decision? At the very least, Sony was well aware of what was happening. I mean, they are literally the ones developing the game. I've seen some conspiracy theories that people are like, Sony was blindsided. They had no idea until this was announced. I mean, if that's true, it would be shocking. I mean, they are literally making the game. So they had to know that this was happening. Now, the intricate details of the contract, right? Was it Sony that signed off on this? Or was this MLB? There is literally no way to know. Okay, there is no way to know whose final decision this is. What we know, at least in the store listing, is that Sony, SIE, is not the publisher of this game on Xbox. It says that the publisher is MLB. Whereas if you look on the PlayStation Store, it says the publisher is SIE. So there is that weird element in there, right? Is MLB doing this? Is Sony doing this? At the very least, Sony was very much aware that this was going to happen. There's just no way that they had no idea. Now, does this look bad? I mean, on the surface, it looks bad. It looks bad, okay? And I'm not saying this means that Sony's evil or Sony's out to hurt consumers or anything like this, but like, it does look crazy that a Sony developed game, they literally made this game, is free on your competitor's platform, but $70 on yours, or 60, right? Just depends on what version you're getting. I mean, on the surface, just like as a PR perspective, man, that looks bad. It just looks bad. It looks bad. I don't know what the answer is here. I do not expect them to put that on Plus for free, even with all this drama. I mean, I think it would be a good idea in terms of like goodwill, but I don't know that you'll see that happen. But at the very least, I think we can all agree it's a big PR hit. Like, it just doesn't look good, right? As at a cursory glance, if you're just an outsider like me, I'm not a hardcore MLB guy. I'll be honest. I don't really care about team sports. I love fighting. I love boxing. I love MMA. I love kickboxing. Anything that's a combat sport, I love. But team sports, I'm like, whatever. I don't really care. But, I mean, to even a casual observer like me, it's like, dude, how is this full price on your console and you're the developer, but then it's free? And I say free with quotes, right? You all know what I mean. Game Pass isn't free. You have to spend money. But I mean, if you are a Game Pass subscriber, you're paying $0 extra for this game. It is pretty crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. We just had a 5 super chat drop. Thank you for this 5 super chat, Professor Ack. Thank you so much. Thanks, Benji, for keeping it positive as always. Thank you. I do my best, Professor. I do my best to keep things positive. Also, very happy that Microsoft is able to change the Xbox narrative. I have friends on iOS curious about Game Pass. Yeah, Professor Ack, this is great to see. Anyone that you know has been even remotely interested in xCloud, as we all know, there was all that drama between Apple and Microsoft in regards to xCloud, right? They were essentially banning it from their service and just trying to do like a crazy workaround where Microsoft would have to get like every single individual game approved by them, which would be the equivalent of like Netflix having to get every single movie and TV show like individually approved, which clearly does not happen. I mean, the library is enormous. You could never do that. That's essentially what they were trying to do with Game Pass, in a way, I think, to keep it off their service, but there was a lot of blowback over it. Phil just recently said that iOS is coming soon. So good news. Any of y'all that are curious about Xbox streaming on iOS, on Apple, it is coming soon, according to Phil Spencer. I think he just said that yesterday. So it's right around the corner. And yeah, Microsoft is doing a very good job of changing the narrative. There's no doubt. And in regards to positivity, I try to keep it as positive as possible, right? What that means is I'm not above criticizing a game. I'm not above criticizing a company. I'm not above any of that stuff, right? I think even in this live chat, I've done a little bit of criticism. But for me, it's like the criticism needs to be valid. And I feel like it also needs to be constructive, right? Going out and just saying, this thing sucks. What does that do, right? Like if I go on Twitter and I say, this developer sucks, this publisher sucks, this game sucks. Okay, but what's the context around it, right? Why does it suck? What could be done to make it better, right? Good, valid, constructive criticism is a great thing. But just blindly saying something sucks or is bad or terrible or this fan of this thing sucks, right? Like it just doesn't do anything to help anybody. So I try to keep it positive, right? I try to celebrate wins more than losses. I think that's important. All right. Super chats are cleared. We're going to be going for about 10 to 15 more minutes. Let me hit some more questions. Ace Spartan. Do you think there's a chance we could see Sony emphasize PS Now because of Game Pass and or xCloud this generation If so, do you think first-party games will release there? Fantastic question, A Spartan. And this ties into a poll I tweeted out, which was the closest poll, at least whenever I checked it last, I have ever run on my Twitter account. So I literally basically asked this, A Spartan, and I asked it in a somewhat generic way, but I asked it in a generic way because I wanted the generic answer. Like, I didn't want to be like super specific about it. I literally just asked, do you think that you are going to see Sony take one of their flagship AAA games? So flagship means God of War, it means Uncharted, it means The Last of Us. I mean, it means a flagship title. And I said, do you think by the end of the PS5 generation, you are going to see them launch one of those games? I don't care. It doesn't have to be all. Do you think they'll take a flagship game and put it day one on one of their streaming services? And it is crazy. Last I checked, at over 2,000 votes, it was quite literally 50-50. 50% voted yes, and 50% voted no, which means people are super divided on if Sony is going to follow in Microsoft's footsteps in any way on putting their games day one on a service. And when I say flagship, you know what I mean. I'm not saying are they going to take a small indie or side type thing and put it day one, because I think we all expect that, right, in some capacity. But a flagship game, I have no idea, A Spartan. I'm with the audience. I'm literally 50-50. I could, in one scenario, see Sony doing this. And in another scenario, I could see them never doing this. Sony's big franchises sell millions. And now they're getting to the point where they sell tens of millions. It used to be Sony had some good selling exclusives, particularly Gran Turismo. But everything outside of that was like a big jump down, right? Whenever you look at like PS1, PS2, PS3 even, it was really the PS4 generation where you saw Sony's exclusives really accelerate in sales across the board, right? Not just like one big franchise. Now they have a lot of big franchises. And I feel like they want to keep capitalizing on that momentum, right? And when you put it on a streaming service, we have that question. Is it going to cannibalize for those big single player games, which is what Sony specializes in? It could. I have no idea, A Spartan. I have no clue. Here's what I'll say. They do need to beef up their offerings. They are going that direction with PS Plus, which is good. But PS Now really needs, I feel like, to step up in some capacity if it wants to compete with Game Pass. Because the truth is, we flat out have numbers for both of those as of a while ago, right? We haven't gotten an update on PS Now in quite some time, and even Game Pass, it's been a little bit. But in a much shorter window, Game Pass has colossally gotten more subscribers than PS Now. So clearly people see a lot more value in Game Pass than they do on PS Now. So I think they do need to beef it up if they want this to keep being a bigger and stronger subscription for them. But if they're going to put their games day one, dude, A Spartan, I have no idea. I'm literally 50-50 on this. I could see either way. Tunsi K here with a super chat with a 5. Let me get a drink really quick. Tunsi K with a 5 saying, once you said you know something about Silent Hill development. Could you share some more info on this? Time. No. So Tunsi K, in regards to Silent Hill, let's go in order here. I do not claim to be an insider. Okay, want to make that very, very clear. Except for sales data, I'll just tell you flat out, yes, I am an insider on sales data. Okay, I mean, I think everyone knows that by now. I have like almost 20,000 followers on Twitter, and those people follow me for sales info. So obviously, I'm going to have contacts to having sales data. Sales info, yes, I am an insider. Outside of sales info, though, I am only, okay, if you're going to grade insiders for having exclusive behind-the-scenes info on game development, I'm going to put myself at like a D. and we're saying A, B, C, D, F, right? I would say I'm not an F. An F is somebody that knows nothing. I'm like a D, right? I find out some things, right? You don't have as many contacts as I do and not hear anything, right? But I don't think I'm an insider. I don't go around trying to find inside info. I don't go around trying to scoop inside info. The people that are reliable for that are people like Jeff Grubb, right? Daniel Ahmed, ZHugeEX. And I know that's not how you say it. Before anyone corrects me, I know it's not ZHugeEX. I just like saying it because it's funny. Like, these are people that are like A-class. They know. Jason Schreier. They know what's going on behind the scenes. Not me, right? I'm like a D. But yeah, sometimes I do hear info. Silent Hill, all I will say is I very reliably, the source is reliable at least. It could be a lie, but the source is reliable. I have heard something about Silent Hill. I can't go more in depth than that because I'm not a leaker and I'm not an insider. If this was, here's what I'll tell you, Tonsi K. If this was something I heard from like 10 people and like they all said the same thing, you know, I might put it out there. But it's not. It's one source that I've heard this from. I have ample evidence to say it's real, what I have heard. But I really can't go more in depth than that, other than if, and this is an if, y'all. It's an if. If what I heard is real, it is surprising. It's not what most people think it is. That's all I'll say. It's literally all I'll say on that. If it's real, I think what everyone's assuming Silent Hill Project is different than what you think it is. But I have no idea. Like I said, y'all, this could be wrong. This could be wrong. But that's all I'll say. That's literally all I'll say about it. Okay. Kieran asking if I think E3 will still happen this year as a digital presentation, and who do you think they could get to take part? It sounds like it is, right? E3 themselves just recently tweeted about this, and they said that it is going to be a digital event, and they said there's no paywall. There was a rumor floating around there was a paywall, but they said it's free. Who they're going to get to take part, I have no idea. Sony, nope. Bethesda's obviously going to be a nope unless Microsoft agrees, right? So it's going to be tough, Kieran. Like, I think they're going to have a lot of issues with that. They're claiming there will be a digital presentation this year, but if you can't get anyone to agree to it, how do you do it? Because Sony will not. Sony, I don't think you'll ever see ever take part of E3 again. They've basically made that clear. Microsoft was still a holdout of E3, but I don't know that they'll do it. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Nintendo, I don't know. Like, you know what I'm getting at, Kieran? It's going to be tough. Like, it'll be tough. It'll be tough. I'd say the only way, Kieran, that they could make E3 successful is if they can get Microsoft to agree to do it. And whenever I say get Microsoft, why are people like, well, why does it specifically have to be Microsoft? Well, I say Microsoft because if you get Microsoft, you're also going to get Bethesda. And it sounds like whatever their summer plans are, they're probably still going to be separate, but in the same time frame. At least that's the rumor that's going around. So if you get Microsoft, you're also going to get Bethesda to also have like maybe their own show and then the Microsoft show on like the same day. So you can generate quite a bit of buzz with that. If you can't get Microsoft to be part of this, so you have no Xbox, no Bethesda, and no Sony, I mean, there's hardly anyone left, right? I mean, maybe you can get Ubisoft and EA, maybe Nintendo. It's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be tough, Kieran, to pull this off. I think a super chat just dropped here towards the end of the chat. Big Fresh 37, two of them, two super chats. Sorry, Benji with another super chat. Thank you for the 5, Benji. What time are we at? Depending on how long these two go, I may do no questions after this, but I don't know. If I get through these two super chats quick, I'll try and pick out 1 or 2 more questions. But we'll see. Let me get rocking on these first really quick. Benji with a 5. Is Game Pass this gen what Xbox Live was on 360? Ooh, Benji, I like this comparison. I like this. Xbox Live surprised Sony, and it took years for PSN to compete. Can PS5 sales be impacted as PS3 sales were? So the second part of that question, can PS5 sales be impacted as, like, is Game Pass going to hurt PS5 sales? I'll say no to that. Sony's brands are just way too important. Like, here's the thing. Sony did such a good job of making their first party such a priority during the PlayStation 4 generation for millions and millions and millions and millions of people. We can't skip a PlayStation. Like, I literally cannot. I have to have a PlayStation. I have to play the next Horizon. I have to play the next God of War. I have to play the next game from Naughty Dog. Like, that was their specialty. I have to play the next Ghost of Tsushima. They did such a good job last gen of building their brands, building their first party, that, like, I think that's just going to carry them no matter what, right? No matter what, at least to high numbers. Does that mean that they can for sure get PS5 to sell as well as, or PS5 to sell as well as PS4? Not necessarily. I think it will, but I'm saying that alone doesn't guarantee you sell 100 million plus. But at the very least, they're going to sell really, really well. But I do, Benji, like the first part of your question there. Sorry, let me get a drink. My voice is going out. The first part of your question, when you say, is Game Pass what Xbox Live was in terms of ahead of the curve compared to Sony? And I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that's a very fair comparison. Back during the 360 and the PS3 days, there was just zero debate that Xbox Live Gold, Xbox Live, was more established, better running. Like, the store just worked better. Like, it was just ahead of the PS3s online, right? It just was. It does not matter what anyone says. Like, it just was, okay? If you ask 100 people, 80 of them, which is the majority, whatever, I'm pulling random numbers out of my butt, but you know what I mean, are going to tell you, yes, Xbox Live was ahead of the curve. And I think the same is true in terms of subscriptions now. Game Pass is ahead of what Sony is doing in the subscription space. Now, PS Now, I do feel, is steadily improving, but they're not on the level of Game Pass. There's just no. Especially now that Microsoft's getting third-party games day one, plus their first-party. Like, it's just not. Game Pass is ahead of PS Now. So, yeah, I think that is a fair comparison. Microsoft is ahead of the curve in terms of getting those subscriptions being really enticing. So, we'll see what Sony does to compete. I think they will compete. Here's the thing. I think Game Pass is too big to ignore. Too big. And with the way it's going to accelerate over the next 1 to 2 years, you have to do something if you're Sony. Does that mean you put all of your games day one on PS Now? I don't know about that. But I think you need, at the very least, have it to where it's like, yo, in 6 to 12 months, every single game guaranteed on PS Now. At the very least, something like that, right? Where there's a window, which we've seen before, right? We're actually starting to see the movie space kind of play around with this, right? Where some stuff comes to theater, but then really rapidly comes to their streaming service, right? It's like an exclusive window. The pandemic has people experimenting on things like that. They will have to boost up PS Now. PS Plus is already a monster, but PS Now specifically compared to Game Pass, yeah, they'll have to do something. And then Big Fresh 37 here with a super chat with a 5. Holy cow, Big Fresh. I think that's like your 4th or 5th one. It's crazy. Saying, can you talk about what resources you use for the sales data you know? If someone wanted to do what you do, where would you direct them to get info? Couple things here, Big Fresh, and I am happy to answer this. So first of all, years of experience. I have been part of the sales community online for over a decade, right? Almost half my life now. I have been on video game forums talking about sales data all the way back to, I started this in like 2006, something like that. I mean, it's a long time. I've been doing this for like, what, 14 years or something like that. So it's going to take a lot of experience to build up. And I'm not the best at this. I'll straight up tell you that right now. There are people that are better than this at me. How do I know that? Because they have jobs. I don't. I'm just an entry-level retail worker, y'all. My job, my day job, I work the same job during the day that a teenager in high school works. Not kidding you. My coworkers are teenagers in high school. I am an entry-level retail employee. I'm not impressive in terms of that. But, I mean, I do think I have a solid base, right? And the main way I built that up was years and years and years of talking in forums, learning from people in forums, learning, how the business works, things like that. Tons of stuff like that helped me along my path. And then in terms of like what resources I use like right now, if you want to get as much information as you can right now, some of the things I look at. Google Trends, okay? Google Trend searches are interesting just to see what people are talking about. It's not 100% like for like, but it's interesting. YouTube trailer views, engagement with YouTube trailer views. So how many people are watching the video compared to liking the video or disliking the video. Amazon sales charts, pre-order charts, any single scrap of chart info I can, whether that's Japanese Famitsu data, whether that's charts that are coming out of the UK, whether that's NPD data that comes out every month, whether it's PR releases, you get what I'm saying. You search for every single scrap of info you can to give you perspective. So it's an undertaking, y'all. I spend literally a huge chunk of my day non-stop researching this, like non-stop. It's like basically, here's my life. I go work my entry-level retail job. I spend some time with my family, what I can. I play some games. If I'm not doing that, I am literally researching games. And even when I'm at work, I'm researching games. And whenever I'm with my family, I'm researching games. It takes a lot of work, right? And all of it's just in my spare time. So Big Fresh, it's an undertaking, okay? It's an undertaking. But you absolutely can do it. I want to tell y'all right now, if you want to do it, you can do it and you can become better than me at it. I'm telling you that right now, okay? So you absolutely can. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. You can do it. If you want to, you can, but it's going to take work. Okay, everyone, I have to go. There's a ton of good questions. There's a ton of great questions. I couldn't hit all the questions as normal. I know I missed a ton. I am so sorry. We're going to be back next week. We're not doing these long breaks. That 3-week gap sucked, but everything's good. Everything's back on track. We're going to be rocking. We're going to be rolling. Really quick, here's my spiel. Like the video if you haven't already. Hit that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm, helps people find my channel. Subscribe if you haven't. My YouTube subscribers have stalled hard. Not surprising considering I didn't stream for 3 weeks, but also even before that, I haven't increased in YouTube subs in a long time, which isn't a big deal. I love doing these streams. I'm never going to stop. But subscribe if you're watching this and you haven't yet. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry I was gone for so long. Promise not to do it again. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already. Hold your question if I missed it. We're back next week. We can talk about the questions I missed next week. Stay safe. Play some games. I will see y'all soon. Bye.